And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southest Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Denny Thompson. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green, and just like that, it is game week for the University of Florida. In fact, we'll be here 1 week from today, right now, recapping the Florida and Utah game. Denny, I know you've been traveling a lot, so obviously it snuck up on you pretty quick. I looked at the calendar earlier this week. I said, wow, Florida plays a game next week. And now here we are inside of a week until kickoff.
Yeah, I thought about it. I was in Lincoln, Nebraska. I don't remember what day, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, with Jeff Sims, and they play next Thursday. It's like, when's the first game? He's like, next Thursday.
Oh, that's the competitors. They're the Fox game against Minnesota, where Florida and Utah are on ESPN at the same time.
Yeah, well, actually, let me rephrase. He said we play our week one games on Thursday. I was like, oh, okay. And in my head, I'm thinking that's a couple weeks. And then I was like, wait, that's 7 days.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, let's go. I mean, it's here. It's here, man. Get the two TVs going. Tyson Sound and Security can get you set up there.
There you go.
There you go. Ready to go, man.
And look, week 0, for what it's worth, tomorrow, there actually is an SEC team in action tomorrow. Vanderbilt hosts Hawaii, but obviously next weekend, Labor Day weekend, is when it really all gets going.
Oh, Hawaii goes to Vanderbilt?
I believe so, because Vanderbilt went out there last year.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I know Vanderbilt had been renovating that stadium, but I think it's good enough to play a game, and that's on the SEC Network tomorrow night. I'll check on that because you got me thinking for a moment, because I know they were doing renovations.
I just assumed if you play Hawaii and you're a random team, you're using that as a team-building experience and going to Hawaii. Yeah. I could be dead wrong.
It was a home and home. I think it was a home and home, and they went to Hawaii last year. All right, so game week. I asked you last Friday, had the game plan been installed? Are they focusing on Utah? You said probably not yet. Now, obviously, it's full steam ahead to Utah. If you're Billy Napier, if you're the staff, what's the message you're giving to your guys now 6 days out from kickoff?
Yeah, I would imagine they are really locked into that game plan now. I mean, they've got essentially, today, Monday, Tuesday.
Travel on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, get a walkthrough in when you get there. And maybe Monday, Tuesday, probably one of those has the feel of a walkthrough. So I would say that as far as the physical nature of it, the hard work's done. Now, the message is pretty simply, what are we going to do? Who are we going to be this year? And we'll dive into breaking this thing down. But I think if you're Billy Napier right now, if you feel like you need to tell them anything, you're way behind.
Yeah.
Right. The juices should be flowing now to the point where all these guys should be locked in. When you go through that long of a camp, towards the end of it, you do get a little bit, I feel like, of a disconnection where guys are just worn down. They're tired. Their body's tired. Their mind's tired. But then once they can sense that first game, they get that, okay, now it's all worth it type of mentality. So I don't know. I haven't been down there, but I would assume that it's full-on business at this point.
You train college athletes. You've been a head coach at the high school level. Some criticism, maybe not towards Napier, but towards the general idea, all the scrimmages that they did. They have lost 2 guys for the year in Justice Boone and Cam Carroll, the transfer, the running back. Is that a fair criticism? Why were 2 guys lost for the year? Your reaction to all that?
They did 2 scrimmages, right?
I believe at least 2, yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody did. You can't play a game if you don't play the game, right? Like, and it's one of those things where, as fans, me included in this, I am a fan. One of the things that will frustrate me more than anything is when my team that I pull for gets into a game and they can't line up, or the play clock gets them, or they can't get in and out of the huddle. Well, that's why you scrimmage, right? Is you're able to have situations flow through a scrimmage, and then you're also able to set those situations up, right? And so you got to do that, and you got to do that full intensity, and guys have to get hit, and guys have to go full speed, right? You have no other way around that. It is a violent game, period, end of story. I don't think outside of some crazy things. Like I remember Manny Diaz a couple years ago having their quarterbacks do Oklahoma drills at midfield.
Yeah.
Outside of a couple just insane things like that, you have to be physical in camp if you want to win football games. And injuries are a byproduct of football, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. But no, I assign zero blame for Billy Napier. He's doing what he feels like he needs to do to get his team ready so they don't look like idiots next Thursday, and so they can come out of this season with 8 wins. That's where his focus is. It's not on gosh, I hope we don't get hurt.
All right, so the talking points about the Utah game. There are a couple of things I want to throw at you. We'll kind of go rapid fire. Actually, there's more than a couple, so we'll spend a minute or two on each. You brought this up last week. You said it was a big deal. If you could elaborate on it, the idea of altitude. Florida does not play, I won't call it the West Coast, but it's pretty far west very often in that time zone, in that atmosphere, if you will. Altitude, the problems it will possess, and do you think it will be a problem for the Gators?
It's an issue. I don't know if it's a problem. It's an issue. I'm sure there's ways you can train for it, but where the issue comes really is it's your first game. It's a big game. It's national TV. You're out there for an hour and a half before the game, warming up, all that kind of stuff. You have to just keep your composure then, or that altitude will jump on you, and you'll find yourself having trouble breathing. And then once you get to that point, like if you don't know how to handle that, that could be an issue for the whole time you're playing, right? So I think as long as the team is locked in on energy conservation early, and hey, let's focus in and realize that this is a thing that we have to deal with, they should be fine. It's I think it's very similar to like Utah coming down here with humidity. Right, it's just a different thing. It's humidity affects breath if you aren't used to humidity. Just like altitude affects the way that you breathe, the way your lungs expand. I'm not a doctor, but I believe that's it. If you're not used to it, and if you get too excited, too worked up, anybody who's been out there knows you can walk around and you're probably fine. Mm-hmm. But go for a jog.
Yeah,
go for a jog. And so there's masks, there's things like that they can do to replicate that, but if you're a player, can you manage those emotions? Can you conserve not just energy, but breath, literally breath, and then play a full game on top of that? I'm sure we'll see more guys on the sideline catching their breath, more guys with a little oxygen assistance, things like that. But at the end of the day, man, there's people that play there every week, right? And they figure out a way to do it. And so it's Florida's turn to do that.
The thing with Florida this year, Graham Mertz is different. I mean, he has played a ton of road environments in the Big Ten, so obviously he's been in some hostile places, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, just to name a few. Florida's guys last year experienced Neyland. They experienced Doak Campbell at night. I'm not going to put Utah on that level, but what I will say is Florida is the first Southeastern Conference team to ever go to Salt Lake City. It's at night. It's to kick off the college football season on national TV on a Thursday. You got to know what you're going into. How do you prepare for that environment?
I'm going to be real honest, Hack. I don't think I've ever watched a Utah game on TV. I have no idea what this fan experience is. I know it seats like 40-something thousand.
I think it's in the high 40s, low 50s. It's very similar to like Autzen Stadium at Oregon.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I that part to me, I have no issues. The altitude I do. But, I mean, have you seen Tennessee?
Oh, right. No,
you know
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be a smartass. I'm saying it to say, like, it's all relative, right? Like, they're practicing crowd noise. But at the end of the day, if you execute and you play good defense, that crowd's an issue for about 45 minutes, right? If you do what you're supposed to do, you can control the way how hyped up that crowd gets. Right, so I think Florida's MO this year is going to revolve around how well they play defense, how well they tackle, basic things like that. They can't give up the extra 3 yards, 4 yards, and in their case, 60 yards at times off of missed tackles. And if you go into that environment and you play good fundamental defense and you tackle whenever you hit them, right? You don't have missed tackles. Then that game becomes pretty boring and pretty dragged out. And I've been a fan at games that are boring and dragged out, and I find myself going, well, this is boring and dragged out, right? So I think if you're Florida, you have an answer for that. It's physicality and execution. One more thing, because we're going to deal with this all year. When you say Graham Mertz please don't point at Graham Marsh because I just get this like why are you talking about Graham?
Yeah, it's very
Utah
simple.
Right
yeah, no, I get it.
Graham, yeah. So Graham, do you get that?
I can go out there and sling at a few, and maybe.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give it a shot. Or
You got eligibility?
What's up?
You got some eligibility left?
No. I went to college for 4.5 years, so I don't think so.
No.
But I went during COVID, so I got next.
I got that COVID year.
He did return a kickoff for touchdown in his high school career.
I did.
So,
that is true.
He's got that going for him.
I'm a lefty. Does that mean anything?
Yeah.
Let's just stay doing this.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southest Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good Dr. Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. To Graham Mertz. Gator fans very lukewarm on Graham Mertz. He does have a lot of starting experience. He's played 32 games in the world of college football, all at Wisconsin. I know that you haven't necessarily worked with him, but you've seen him, you've talked with him, you know people that have worked or are currently working with him. What should Gator fans expect next Thursday night when they see Graham Mertz?
I think he's kind of built for this. I think he's in a unique situation. When I say built for this is what I mean. I think we're not expecting a whole lot out of Graham. Right? Right. So
our expectations, you're right, are not very high.
Well, let's compare because this time last
I heard
year,
that one and I took it personally.
I was talking to you. If you compare last year, we expected the world out of Anthony Richardson, right? And
in the Utah game, we got it.
Well, in a lot of games you got it, but you expected so much, and the team played so poorly that you really couldn't see that because they ended up in losses, right? Graham's a different thing because if he goes out there and he manages the football game and they win, he's going to be the favorite person on the face of the planet, right? So I don't think he has to go in there with the attitude of, I got to throw for 300, I got to rush for 100 to be successful. No, dude, you can throw for 180 and you can rush for 37, and y'all can win this game 17-16, and Gator Nation is going to love you. And if you do that again the next week and the next week and the next week, dude, you're good. So I think sometimes when you're allowed to just be who you are and be what you're strong at, and especially in this game when I would suspect that Utah is going to sneak people towards the line of scrimmage, essentially I would think that they'll play maybe a two-safety shell, but really they'll be a safety coming down for run support, and maybe they'll give a little bit of help with Pearsall, but outside of that, everybody else is on their own. There's going to be opportunities over the top.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, right? I mean, the thought is about the Gator offense, Montrell Johnson for 4, 2nd and 6, Montrell Johnson for 2, 3rd and 4, Graham Mertz to Pearsall, 6 yards, move the chains.
But here's where that gets really fun. Is the first 3 drives you do that, and you drive down the field, and maybe you don't score all 3. Maybe you get a field goal and a touchdown, but you are punching them in the mouth. And then all of a sudden, as a good play caller, wait a second, on first down, let's take a shot here.
Yeah, that safety gets too close.
Let's hard play action here, and let's go to somebody other than Pearsall.
Now, here's the question. Other than Pearsall, Caleb Douglas, Marcus Burke, and then it's the kids. And I mentioned the kids. They're all true freshmen, right? Andy Jean, Aiden Mizell, Eugene Wilson. Who is the guy other than Pearsall?
Well, I mean, you got to find that out. And I think that comes down to the look you're going to get a lot of times. And I haven't studied Utah's defense. I'm just going basic here. What I think most people would do with Florida is they're going to feel comfortable playing those guys man, right? And I think you just got to figure out, all right, which one wins? It doesn't have to be the prettiest one, but which one of those other guys on 1st and 10, maybe after sudden change, maybe we get a turnover, which one of those guys can we go hard play action, they go over the top, maybe like a little just hard post to a dig with Pearsall to pull the safety down, and you got to have those. Those are the ones that you have to have because those open a game up, right? Those are the ones that you hit, you score, shuts the crowd up, and then the next time in, that safety's kind of on his heels.
Right. You do 1 or 2 of those, that safety doesn't creep up. All of a sudden, there's 7 in the box instead of 8, and you can get back to the running game.
And that's where I think, like, a Graham Mertz, because I do think Napier is a good play caller. I almost think in ways last year with the weapons that he had, he probably overly complicated this and try to do things that maybe with Graham Mertz he can't do, which will simplify it. Does that make any sense? So I think you go into this and you're like, hey, here's our 8 or 9 plays that we love out of 4 or 5, 6 different formations, and you go in there executing at a high level with those, right? So I think if they can do that, Hack, they don't just have a chance in this game. I would expect that they would win if they could just tackle and find balance offensively. It's that simple. Quickly
to the defensive side of the ball. Austin Armstrong's first game as the D coordinator at Florida. He just turned 30, so he's no longer in his 20s. He's the 30-year-old Gator defensive coordinator. He blitzes a lot, man. We talked about this last week. That's one of the things he's known for is coming after guys. The interesting dynamic, Cam Rising, great player at Utah, the quarterback, tore the ACL in the Rose Bowl, is on schedule to play, but their backup quarterback got injured, so there's not a lot of depth behind Rising. They don't have a lot behind him. Does that affect the way Utah calls the game? Does that make Armstrong be more aggressive in going after Rising in that game?
I wouldn't think it would affect. In the sense that if Rising's not in, you would expect a heavy dose of run, right? There's run blitzes. So I don't think that it would affect. As long as you've got all the gaps covered, your run fit's solid. When you blitz, you just get there faster, right? Yeah, you open yourself up to more big plays. But we talked about this last week. I think if you go into the game with a guy that you hired who's a heavy blitzer, aggressive play caller defensively, and all of a sudden you tell them not to blitz. We see this in third and fourth quarters with teams that are up when you take the personality out of the team. I think you're kind of neutering the coach, neutering the defense. So, I want to see the Florida defense that we plan on seeing, knowing that they're going to get better as the year goes on. But structurally, I want to see, is this an aggressive defense that's trying to make hits 2 yards past or 2 yards into the backfield, or are they a defense that's relying on tackling 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, right? So I think that's the thing that I'm going to be played out, or I'm going to be interested in. If I'm Napier, I'm telling Armstrong, you do what you do, man. I brought you here for a reason. It's a big game start the season. Earn your money. Blitz the piss out of them if you want to. Just make sure it works.
The interesting thing to me, and again, I don't look at the lines very often in Vegas, but I had a buddy of mine text me, the line's been coming down. Like a couple of weeks ago, I think it was like a touchdown. Then it came down to 6.5, then 6. And I'm looking at it this morning. Some lines in Vegas have it at 5.5. Some even have it down to 5. Makes you wonder, right? And again, I'm just speculating here, but for a line to move 1.5, 2 points in the last couple of weeks, is there doubt in the minds of the people in Vegas about Cam Rising coming into this game?
Man, I think it's, I said this last week, and I just don't want to keep repeating myself, but I really think people just are sitting back and going, wait a second. It's still Florida, right? And it's still Utah. And I know Utah is a very good program, a very good team. And we went through this last week, so I won't go bar for bar with it again. But one team still has the better athletes than the other one. It's purely an execution game.
Yeah, but it is Utah and it is Southern Cal, and that didn't seem to matter last year, right? It is Utah, it is whoever they play. Utah should have beat Florida last year, quite frankly.
But they didn't.
They didn't. They didn't.
No, bottom line, they didn't. I understand. There was an intercept. Bottom line, they didn't. And part of the reason they didn't is because that environment that they were in, they weren't able to execute when times got tough, right? And they blew it. That's what it is. There's a reason why for this game, this is probably one of the biggest games in Utah history.
Arguably the biggest home game. Arguably.
So think about that for a second.
Yeah.
A Florida team that got drummed in the bowl game, a Florida team that ended up with a losing record, right, after the bowl game last year. All of that stuff, but yet it is the biggest game in the history of that stadium. Just think about that.
There's pressure on Utah. There's no doubt about that.
No, it's just this don't happen there.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen there. And SEC teams, especially upper tier, and I'm going to call Florida upper tier because they recruit upper tier. I understand that they weren't upper tier last year. They look different when they get off the bus, bro. I've been there. Like, you compare Utah getting off the bus and Florida getting off the bus, it looks different, right? Florida recruits different cats. There's different dudes in the SEC and the Big Ten than there is everywhere else. So I think a lot of people are sitting here and going, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It's the second year with Napier. It is SEC. This isn't anything new to them, but this is the world to Utah, right? There's a reason for that, man, and I think we're going to see that next Thursday night.
I want to end with Swamp Kings, the Netflix documentary, just briefly touch upon that and get a prediction from you quickly. A Florida win, to me, does very similar things that last year did. I think it might spike expectations to an unrealistic level. If Florida does lose next Thursday, which they are clearly the underdog in this game, how big a deal is that moving forward? I guess it depends on the type of game it is.
Yeah, I mean, if it's bowl game lose.
Well, yeah. If you get taken behind the woodshed, right.
But assuming it's, either way a close game.
Would you feel good if Utah wins 27-23 in a hard-fought fourth-quarter game? Would that give you more optimism than maybe is currently in Gator Nation right now?
No, I don't think I would feel good about a loss in any way, shape, or form if I'm Florida. Just like I don't think I would get overly excited about a win. The thing about I think everybody can identify with this. The thing about common sayings, right? As you get older, you realize they're common sayings for a reason. And this take 1 week at a time. I know everybody thinks it's coach talk, but there's no other way to do this. There's no other way that you can play football or you can be in business or anything else and look at any other day than the one you're in. And I think that's the approach for Florida. That's the mature approach for Florida this year. This is Utah, and when we get done with Utah, we're going to see where we're at. And the biggest improvement comes between weeks 1 and 2, right, for every football team. And so now we're going to find out where we're weak at or where we're strong at, who surprised us, who's a gamer, who's not a gamer, who's a practice player, and we will get better, win or lose.
I don't disagree with any of that. I want to go back to something you said, though. If Florida goes into Salt Lake City on a Thursday night, the first SEC team ever to go in there and wins, that's a big win. And that's a huge win for Billy Napier. And that's just not to me, that's just not another win. That is probably his biggest win as head coach at Florida.
What did that win get him last year?
Agreed. But the expectation is that this team is going to be average to below average. And if on opening night in Salt Lake City on national TV, they go out there and they win, that's a statement.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that, but you asked me what it does for expectations moving forward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I agree with what you're saying.
For the here and now, it's a statement.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, it would be a lot of fun for next weekend. Being able to watch college football with your team having just beat, what is Utah's preseason ranking?
They're 14.
Really?
Yeah.
We're scared of the number 14 team in the country?
Yes.
They're not top 10?
They're not. And yes, we are scared of them. Or at least I am.
The heck are we doing?
No, but it's where
what are we doing?
To be fair, I feel like they should be top 10, though.
It's where Florida is right now.
I feel like y'all are overhyping Utah. I'm going to be honest, man. Like, I don't understand. Like, I know they went to the Rose Bowl. I know all that. I don't understand.
Right. They went to the Rose Bowl where Florida went to the Las Vegas Bowl.
Okay, so if that's the case, if that's what we're going by, and I mean this respectfully to everybody, then why are we even talking about this? Why are we, if we're talking about it, and the way I'm hearing, these guys are supposed to be a top 10 team, and we're going into one of the toughest places to play in the country.
Well, win-loss wise, Utah doesn't lose.
Then why are we even here? I don't get the infatuation with you. I think their coach is one of the best coaches in the country. And the reason why I think he's one of the best coaches in the country is because he's winning at Utah.
Yeah.
Right? It's still at Utah.
Here's where I think your logic's flawed. Who has more talent, Florida or Vanderbilt?
Oh, Florida.
It didn't seem to matter last year.
Right. I understand that.
Florida has more talent than
Florida
Missouri.
had more talent than a lot of people last year. My only point is I'm trying to find why we're supposed to just roll over and die to Utah. I don't get that. I don't understand. Don't misunderstand me on this. I'm not saying that y'all are going to end up wrong. I'm just saying if you present the facts to me, we're going to Utah, a 47,000-seat stadium, who's never hosted a game like this, who's the 14th ranked team in the country. Big deal. Big freaking deal. You got to go to Tennessee. You play in front of 90,000 here in Jacksonville because the number one team in the country.
Right.
You played at LSU. Is it a signature win for Napier? Maybe, but I hope not. I hope it's just a normal Saturday by the end of the year.
See, I go back to, we're going to bring up Swamp Kings in a moment. In 05, 06, 07, 08, this would not be a big deal. Florida in 2023 is not what Florida was 15 years ago. That's why, to me, it's a much bigger deal now than it would have been 10 to 15 years ago.
You know this. I am one of these that thinks that Florida fans are some of the most unreasonable fans on planet Earth. And so this is a little bit of a change.
But we do appreciate you watching every week here on the 1010XL.com podcast
network. They're
network.
going to continue to watch because they're addicted to Florida. That's fine. I'd love you guys to death. Y'all haven't seen my DMs last year with Anthony. They're very passionate. We'll call them that.
I did, yeah. They were passionate.
So, but I'm going to do kind of a 180 here, and I'm going to be that guy, I guess. I don't understand it. If this was, man, they brought everybody back, and they're a top 5 team, but they're not. No. And they didn't, and they've got injuries. So I think if you went down the line and you hooked all the Florida players up to a polygraph and you ask them, do you expect to beat Georgia? They could say yes, but that polygraph's going to tell you they're lying. They do not expect to beat Georgia. If you did that same thing with Utah, 100% of them expect to do it, and 100% of them would pass a polygraph. That's the way I feel about this. They're going in there, and the only people think that they're underdogs are us. They don't think so, and there's something to that hack.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southest Orthopedic Specialists. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. I want to circle back to get a prediction in just a moment. Quickly, Swamp Kings on Netflix. I watched most of it. It's getting panned by non-Gator fans because they're saying Netflix didn't dive into the swamp, if you will, to the minutia of their arrests and everything. There was some of that. There wasn't a lot of that. They didn't bring up the Aaron Hernandez stuff at all. I don't know this, but I would assume that Florida gave Netflix access to a lot of things, a lot of footage, a lot of stuff, and they're like, all right, we'll give you this. You already did an Aaron Hernandez documentary already on the murder and everything. Let's try to keep the Aaron Hernandez stuff to a minimum, which they did. Overall, I thought it was a good documentary if you like the Florida Gators. I think it was Urban Meyer trying to save face a little bit. I think it was an Urban Meyer piece, if you will. But a couple of things stood out. Like, I had no idea Brandon Spikes and Tim Tebow got into an altercation. And
I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, yeah, they basically at the Mississippi State game in 2009, they got into a halftime altercation in the locker room.
That's so awesome.
Where they were going at it. You got the alpha male on the defense, the alpha male on the offense.
The best part of it by far, and I'm not going to try to spoil anything for it, but they have the locker room footage they have is incredible.
Yeah, they have.
You're not going to spoil anything for me. You can say whatever.
Yeah, they got a lot of stuff, and that's why I think
that's the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's why I think the Aaron Hernandez stuff maybe was agreed upon beforehand, not to be brought up.
I think it's I think it's interesting though because everything that I've seen about it, I haven't seen much. I'm not on social media that much, but everything I've seen is what you said. It's like it's a fluff piece. I like that. I mean, if you want to go do a piece that's 100% accurate and true, then somebody put up the money and go do it. Go do that. But I have no problem with giving people a chance to tell their sides of a story. I have no problem with putting out a piece of positives, if you will, from an era. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Again, I don't want no spoilers, but you talk about pieces of an era. Georgia ran on the field, celebrated in 07. Yeah. They asked Brandon Spikes about it. Brandon Spikes said, I wanted to kill Noshawn Marino in 08. And remember the first hit that he hit Marino?
Yeah, see,
he said, I wanted to kill him.
I love that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Yeah. No, I'm going to watch it. I was in 6 different cities this week. So I'm going to watch it. I'm looking forward to watching. I've been waiting for my son to come back home to watch it with him. I'm interested in it. If there's a piece that's telling you all the dirt, I probably would not be the one to watch that.
And the one thing, and again, the last thing I'll bring up about it, this is common knowledge if you live in these parts. The 2009 loss to Alabama really still affects a lot of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Really still. I mean, Tebow in particular, it really still affects him.
I mean, they were elite guys, man. They had whatever you want to say, they had elite football players. There was a whole roster full of those guys. And at the time, an elite football coach, right? And you put those two things together, you get a good quarterback and a good football coach on any level, and they're going to do well, and that's what they had. So I am looking forward to watching it. I'm sorry I haven't done that. I probably should have knowing I had this podcast today.
All right, Hawaii Vanderbilt is in Nashville, by the way.
It is in Nashville. What's that kickoff?
7:30 on the SEC Network. It's the first SEC game of the year. I'm all for it. All right.
Will you watch that?
I will go. Maybe the Jaguars are on during that time.
Okay.
So, I mean, I will go back and forth, and I'll probably – I don't know if I'll DVR Hawaii Vanderbilt, but I'll watch Navy Notre Dame.
Yeah, I will too.
Yeah, that's the first game of college football. That's tomorrow.
Shout out
at 2:30. Yeah, the Navy quarterback, right?
Yep. He's a local kid, Creekside.
Yeah, from Creekside. Yep. So Navy and Notre Dame, UTEP, Jacksonville State. That big one tomorrow night on ESPN, UMass and New Mexico State.
Can't wait.
Although, you know what? Good for those schools. Move up a week early. You get on national TV. It is college football. They'll never have another opportunity to be primetime Saturday night on ESPN, which is kind of what Week 0 is all about. All right, 6 days away, Florida and Utah. The next time we talk, next week, we will be reacting to that game right here on Gator Bytes, which will be pretty crazy 7 days from now. Are we talking about a win? Are we talking about a loss?
Well, I mean, you know where I stand. I think Florida wins this football game. I'm not making any grand gesture for the season. I'm talking specifically about 6 nights from right now. I think Florida goes in there with an attitude, and I think they're able to win that football game, and I think they're going to be able to win that football game because, quite frankly, I think their front seven's just going to be a little bit bigger, a little faster, a little bit more dog in them. Like, that's where I think this football game is won.
You're picking Florida. A month ago, I had no doubt Utah was going to win this game. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks ago, I was very confident Utah was going to win this game. As we get closer, now I think Utah is going to win this game. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I've gone from no doubt to very positive to I think they're going to win. I'm still going to pick Utah, but I am not as positive about it now as I was 4 weeks ago.
And, I don't mean like give me how do you think the game's going to go?
I think it's going to be a back and forth game, and ultimately Utah finds a way to win with the crowd. A mistake, a penalty, a turnover, something happens against Florida in the fourth quarter. I think Utah wins the game 27. I said 27-23 earlier. I'll go with that. 27-23.
Okay. I have 27-13 in my head. But I don't think it's a blowout. Like
if Florida goes in there and wins by 2 touchdowns next Friday, it'll be an awful lot of fun on this podcast.
I don't expect them to win, but in my head, it's like I can see like a 20-13 game late, and then Florida tacks one on, kind of a 4-minute drill into the game type of thing with those running backs. But yeah, I mean, I think we're the same on the way we think the game's going to flow. Graham, where are you at on this, big dog? You got to give us a prediction each week now.
Lying season is in full effect. I've told the truth all off season that I think Utah is going to win substantially, like Hack, and the way Hack described is exactly what's happening to me. As kickoff gets closer, you start to believe a little more, and it chips away. I think Florida wins that game now.
Yeah.
Go, Graham.
I like your optimism.
Let me tell you why. Because Florida's running game, I think, is going to be so effective that I think that's going to control the entire tempo of the game. I think it's going to muddy up the game and make it much uglier than the type of game Utah wants to play. They're not holding Utah to 13 points. I don't think that's happening. I think I see 28-25.
I'm not trying to be negative guy here. I'm really not. Is Osiris Torrance playing next week? Is Richard Garage playing next week? Is Ethan White playing next week? Who are these offensive linemen that are going to establish the run against Utah? Guys that have never played.
That's not my problem.
Well, I'm just saying
that's Billy Napier's problem.
Well, it is. And
if you got the head coach job at the University of Florida and you have a transfer portal, you better have addressed that. I'm going, and I'm glad you said that, because I am going under the assumption right now that Billy Napier in his second year is going to be better than his first, that this roster in Billy Napier's second year is better than what it was in his first. If I'm wrong on that, then it's not shame on me, it's shame on that staff. That's the assumption that I'm making because I do think he is a very organized and good football coach. And I think that they had a plan in the portal and they've executed that plan and they had a plan in recruiting. If you're right on that, and you could be, then yeah, I'm 100% with you, Hack. But I'm putting a lot of trust into these guys as football coaches and as developers. And if we get out there and see that that hasn't happened, then yeah, it could get ugly.
All right, Graham's going Florida. Denny's going Florida. I'm going to be the one that's right. I'm going Utah. Regardless of what happens, 1 week from right now, 9 a.m., next Friday, we will be here for Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com podcast network and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Remember, you can listen to the game next Thursday on 1010XL here in Jacksonville and on 92.5 FM. For Denny Thompson, for Graham Marsh, I'm the hacker Ryan Green. We'll see you next week to react, win or lose, to Florida and Utah.